I'm Jeremy Ford with Beyond the Paddock. Coming up today, I get to sit down with Steve Pruitt and find out what it was like to put the very first hybrid electric car on the podium in the American LaMans Series. As always, this is Beyond the Paddock. Here on the restaurant. Appreciate you taking some time with me here. I want to hear about the LMP1 car and what it was like to race with you.
It began really because nothing like a hybrid race car existed at the time. It's kind of like our Garage Grill restaurant. Nothing existed like that until we went and developed it. So the story goes way back to Long Beach Grand Prix in 2008. We actually, our Corsa Motorsports team was a racing with Ferrari team, which is effectively a factory-backed race team running the F430 LMGT in the GT2 class, the American LaMans Series. Is supported by Ferrari factory and by Michelato, who does all the race prep at the time for Ferrari. We were at Long Beach running in the American LaMans Series race. And at the time, the price of oil was at $142 a barrel.
My God.
Which, compared to where it is today, I think it closed today at like $62 a barrel. So you can imagine, we were back to the early 70s in terms of the cost of gasoline, the price of crude oil, refining, and all that stuff. And we were sitting in the paddock at lunch after we had finished our qualifying run. And one of my drivers came to me with an inquiry about, did I have any interest in taking a look at, developing a hybrid race car? And I said, well, probably so. You got to give me a little more detail. So we started talking about it. And what the proposition was that ZYTEK out of the UK was looking for a partner to develop an LMP1 car, which for us, being in GT2, it was competitive enough, but getting into LMP1 is a different kettle of fish because there it's fully factory-supported race teams.
Were you the only non-factory team?
Well, no, we were actually a Ferrari factory team running in GT2.
Okay.
But at that time, the LMP1 class was populated and LMP2s were Porsches, Audis, Aston Martin, all the big factory teams, and they were supporting the teams that were running the cars. So I said, well, it's a novel idea. It'd be interesting to explore it a little bit further. So we had a few meetings down there. One was with, I think, Trevor Foster with ZYTEK, and it kind of floated the idea about how this thing might fit together, and they were looking for a team partner to help them develop the technology. I came back from the race at Long Beach, where I think we finished fourth in that race, one step off the podium in GT2. And I was out at the track, what used to be Miller Motorsports Park, is now is Utah Motorsports Campus. I'm not sure what the naming of it now. Yeah. And I'd had, a relationship with Larry Miller, who, used to own Utah Jazz, among other things, and Larry had developed probably one of the finest tracks around. It was just out in the middle of Tooele, which is in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, that's the only race facility we really had. I was the first person to ever rent garage space from Larry when the track opened, and it was just that, it was garage space. It didn't really have proper race facilities. So when we moved up to the GT2 class in ALMS, we needed a proper race facility. Since it didn't exist, in Tooele, we moved. I came in and bought a building in town, and we moved the entire race team into town. That way we had a building where we could park our transporter inside, had enough room for the cars and everything else. So I'd had a long-standing relationship with him, and we started talking about it. And we talked for 2-3 weeks, I guess. And the idea excited Larry because he was just then starting to get hybrid road cars onto the showroom floors in his dealerships.
These are like the Priuses of the world.
Yeah,
this was 07, 08.
I think at the time that when the family finally divested of the Larry H. Miller dealerships. They were the 7th largest dealer in the country.
Right.
So he was across all brands and everything else, but I think it was really started with Prius. So, and I kind of explained to him, what the proposition was. He said it intrigued him. He said, give me a little more information, which I went and retrieved the information, brought it back to him. And in the end, what we ended up doing was he wanted to pursue, the development of the car. The business deal that we worked out together, which was that I would go get the car, find the car, I would get it homologated by the FIA to be able to run it as a hybrid race car because it didn't exist. So
Right.
we're starting.
So at that time, when you went to the FIA, were you having to explain everything to them, or was it just,
Well,
we
that's-
have a hybrid?
It's a kind of a sidebar story. We
You can
didn't.
weave.
Well, when we went to get it homologated, there were certain aspects of the hybrid technology that the FIA was set on maintaining, and we had to comply with. I didn't think that was the most efficient way to go about it, but if we wanted to get the car homologated, we were going to have to acquiesce to what their rules were. What we ultimately found out was that the rules that they had imposed on us were the same rules that they had co-developed with Peugeot.
Oh, so they were trying to protect
So
Peugeot a little
the
bit. You were the new
French
guy.
governing body was trying to protect the French manufacturer with the suspected idea that they wanted the French car to be the first one on the grid with this technology. So anyway, we complied with that and went forward. So, but at the onset, we knew it was going to be a difficult task because batteries, not like a Prius, which effectively back then were a bunch of cell phone batteries.
Right.
So we had to develop a more robust battery. We had to develop one that could fit within the chassis of an LMP1 car.
Because you had to match what the car already looked like.
Yeah,
right? You couldn't
the
vary
rules
much.
were already set in terms of what the configuration of the driving, cockpit is in an LMP1 car. So we had to develop a battery, one that was robust enough to do what we wanted to. We wanted to develop it so we could run the battery off of KERS, which is Kinetic Energy Recovery System, which uses your braking recapture of that energy to restore the battery's
battery.
power, and it goes on.
It's
lap
pretty
after-
standard now, but this
Yeah,
was new at the
it's-
time.
Yeah,
Right?
it didn't exist. So we ended up, to make the system work, we used SAFT out of France to develop the 5x7 array of lithium-ion cells. Johnson Controls was engaged to do the battery management control system, and it ended up being assembled by Continental AG in Germany, who was at the time just initiating work on the Mercedes BlueTech technology to bring hybrids in to more streetcar marks. So with those all sourced out, then we started trying to put the components together in the race car, which was quite challenging because, as everybody knows, if you've touched the back of your cell phone once it's working, how the heat it gets. Well, you can imagine what this was a fairly sophisticated system at the time, and we mated this technology with a 65 kilowatt electric motor.
Wow.
Which ZYTEK was at the forefront of developing electric motors for transportation. And as it turned out in hindsight, the motor that we used was the forerunner of the electric motor that went into the first hybrid McLaren F1 car.
Wow. So how much of this did you have to do? I mean, it sounds like a ton of development work going on, getting the car, and you did this in about a year?
We did it in fairly short order, yes.
Yeah. Was the manufacturer leading the way, or did you say, I have this?
No,
Yeah,
we were using ZYTEK's 4-liter V8 as the base power plant, which was their in-house bespoke motor. We coupled that with the hybrid system, which required a lot of changes. You had to redo the bell housing because now you've introduced an electric motor, between into the drive system.
So is there some sort of clutch between the two, or is it just?
No, it all worked off of an elaborate electronic dashboard system. It looked like something out of, Back to the Future that Doc Brown might have designed at the time. The one of the bigger problems was trying to find a way to cool the battery. So we came up with a system, and we would design it so that we could alternate the weight systems predicated on the configuration of the track we would run. But basically, it was all outboard. The battery actually sat in the cockpit next to the driver. So, and that kind of gave us a little weight balance.
Weight distribution, right?
Yeah. We then had an outboard cooling system that functioned in conjunction with the radiator cooling system to provide cool, trying to get as much air into that cavity as we could so that we could cool the battery and so it wouldn't fry itself and would continue to work. So, and it was, I thought, an amazing feat of engineering that ZYTEK put together with it. My part in it was really developing and testing the car, but more importantly, writing the checks.
Right.
So basically, we paid for all the technology,
all the technology to come out, and to this day, that system is probably still used. A lot of what you started.
Well, the configuration of it is it's changed a lot. It was interesting when we first ran that car on the track in 2009. Once we got through that technology of hybrid and the top end of sports car racing was not reintroduced until last year. So it went a complete hiatus until everybody started moving towards hybrids.
And what is the fundamental benefit of, I understand on a street course, you have a hybrid to save fuel economy, but I'm not so sure racing, we're so worried about fuel economy, are we? Or are we using this as
Well, that system is a multi-purpose system. It serves the purpose of giving you a little extra oomph. It's like push to pass.
Right.
You know, you'll see these race cars today, whether it's IMSA, whether it's the World Endurance Champ, WC, whether it's Formula One, you'll see these cars and you'll hear the commentators say, well, they're trying to recharge their battery so they can make another run at the car in front of them. And effectively, that's what we were using with the curve system. It's a lot more sophisticated now than obviously what we were doing. We were caveman at the time. But it also served another purpose, which we learned later, is that when the car went into regen sequence and the driver went on the brakes and it went into regen, it gave us better braking stability at the rear. Whereas you see a lot of cars go in, and sometimes, you know, they'll fishtail a little bit because you may have braking bias off a little bit or something like that. When we first learned it, we were going into turn 2 at Laguna Seca. I think it was the Andretti car we were running next to at the time. And we found we could go about a half a car length deeper into the turn
you got into
because the regen sequence added to our braking capacity. So, and that's typically where passing is done, is under braking as opposed to, you know, throttle. So we found it a unique, you know, learning curve on how to do that and develop a car. So
you get the car homologated, you get the car to the track, you're testing it here.
Well, the story goes back even a little bit further. After Larry and I had got together, the deal that Larry and I had struck was that he wanted me to come back to the track and be part of the track because I was really the only professional racing team that was, you know, had been there, and now we'd moved out. He wanted us back at the track. He wanted things to add to the success of the track. He says, here's the deal. You go buy the car, your dime, and you spend whatever it takes to get it homologated by the FIA so we know we can run it. And you get that done, and what I will do is I will build us a proper facility so you can move back out to the track. I'll pay to run the car, but we get to use the car to promote hybrid technology. So it was a kind of a quid pro quo. And I said, it's a deal. So I set out trying to find the car. I went to the UK. I was able to locate this car because of the previous conversations with ZYTEK, and we ended up buying the ZYTEK car as it exists. We had gone through the technology development of the car, and the only problem we had was that we were testing the car in North America, but the batteries were in Europe, sitting at Continental AG. So we went to fly them here, but we couldn't fly the batteries here because it was more lithium ion than you could fly in a commercial jet. So
All right.
We went back to Dr. Don Panos, who actually owned at the time the America LaMans Series. He was famous, I think, for developing the nicotine patch. So he was fairly well heeled. Great, great gentleman. Loved Don. And Don offered us his private jet. So we were flying batteries across the Atlantic to get them here, to put them in the car. And that's really when we began our development and testing.
And I'm sure the battery was always showing up right in the nick of time.
Well, yeah, and it was, the story kind of has a lot of fingers to it, but the first time we showed up with the car, we went to the scrutineers, which you go through all of that to make sure your car is legal and everything. But then we had to have special sessions with the corner workers and track management, because when they came out the first time, they were all dressed in Back to the Future outfits because they were fearful of.
Oh, you had a lithium battery if you catch on fire now.
Well,
right?
the lithium could catch on fire, but it also, those are all carbon fiber tubs and they conduct electricity. So we spent an extra 30 minutes at each race going through and describing the technology, how to, if there was ever a shunt or an accident, how do you approach the car? What's the best management practices, with which to deal with the car. So it was interesting because
and you're having to make this stuff up and try to test it on the fly. I assume. I mean,
we didn't make it up. We had to explain to them how the car had been homologated and how you should approach it as opposed to a normal car that runs into the wall, because it's a little bit different because you don't know what's been damaged at the time.
Wow.
So it was it was a learning experience for everybody at the time. So, but we were fortunate. We did some pre-development testing with the car. We ended up on the podium at the 4 Hours of Laguna Seca. Following year, we ran the full hybrid system. And at the New England Grand Prix at Lime Rock Park, we finished on the podium in LMP1. So that was the first time an electrical powered car in LMP1 design had finished on the podium. Now, Dr. Panos, I hearken back to him because he originally developed in the late 90s a car called Sparky. A Sparky was its nickname. It was a Panos race car, but they tried to do the hybrid system, but it was all a bunch of batteries in series, so it weighed about as much as a tank. But it was not what this system was. This system was a parallel hybrid, as opposed to just...
So you're getting energy both from the motor and
the
combustion engine.
So, yeah, it was different, but it was the first time ever an electric-powered car ever finished on the podium at the highest end of motorsports.
Wow. Whatever happened to ZYTEK? Are they still racing?
Oh, ZYTEK, yeah, they've stayed there. They were the bespoke engine for all of the LMP2 class. And they raced this car in various other forms and fashions. I know Nigel Mansell drove one of the cars at Le Mans, but we were still the first.
You were still the guinea pig.
Yeah. We have all the receipts.
Do you have any stories from the track, actual race days, anything like that?
Well, I know we were at Laguna Seca again running, and we had Pixar in the pits. Pixar was developing their Cars series of movies. And at the time, they were thinking about doing something on us, but they didn't know about this electrification of transportation nonsense. And we were actually leading in LMP1, and we pulled into the pits, and we had a short, and we could not figure it out. And finally, after about 30 minutes in the pits, we found out it was just a loose wire connection. It was grounding out through the carbon. So we got it fixed, got back in the race, ended up finishing fourth that day. But again, one step short of the podium. So, yeah, we had a lot of stuff like that. That was just a lot of challenges in the learning curve to be able to develop and have the car finish.
Right. And the car right now is at the garage grill. It's
Garage grill, yeah. The car, we had our primary drivers were Stefan Johansson, drove for Ferrari and F1.
Right.
He had his own race team, did a lot of different things, and Johnny Molam out of the UK. So we had, considerable talent, piloting the cars, as it were.
Right.
But again, our testing and development was woefully short of what the manufacturers and what our competition.
Right. So you bowed out gracefully?
Well, when we got through with the season, it ended up in 2010, as we developed the system, we ended up getting awards from the Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Department of Energy, and the Society of Automotive Engineers for the battery technology development.
Right.
We were still at the forefront of it.
I think I've seen this. The world's baddest hybrid, I think, was
Yeah, the
title.
Wall Street Journal did a fuller, interview with us and put it in the journal. So yeah, we had a lot of notoriety. We never got much money from it, but so anyway, we ran the car till the end, and then we were looking forward to the 2011 season, and that's when the FIA came back in and said, "Well, LMP1 we're gonna change these rules."
So
And effectively what they did is they changed the rules to the point where, it's too expensive to do that. And as a privateer competing with manufacturers, it made no economic sense to do so. So I went back to them and I said, listen, if you're willing to keep the rules same for 3 years, a 3-year window, because the investment that we've made in this, I'm willing to stay here and compete. And they didn't want any of that. So we folded our tent and left.
So every time they change a rule, almost every aspect of the car has to change,
millions
right?
of
It's a whole new
dollars.
car.
Yeah, you're starting from basically except for the tub, you're starting with a blank sheet of paper. So starting from scratch and writing more
Because
checks.
somebody wants 1 inch.
And to go back, when I got the homologation done, I got on the phone to call Larry Miller to tell him I had completed my end of the bargain.
Oh, yeah.
And it happened to be the day that Larry had his diabetic heart attack.
So you go, you buy the car, you put all the energy in getting it homologated with with the thought of your partner being able to take the car and help you with the team.
And help us with the finances
Oh,
on it,
no.
the facilities. And it happened the same day. So I'm pregnant with this car now and this project.
You own it, right?
Yeah,
You signed some contract somewhere.
I owned it. So we forged ahead. Larry, unfortunately, was never to be seen from again. He was up at IHC for, 6 or 8 weeks.
Oh, my.
Eventually, we got word that he had lost his legs to the diabetes. I went and got a book signed by Alex Zanardi, who had lost both of his legs at Lausitz, Germany, on an IndyCar race, and sent it over to the Miller headquarters, hoping that they could get it to Larry to show him, what can be done if you do lose your legs. And it was very shortly after that he passed. So,
Oh, my God. So you had to race.
yeah, so we forged ahead as long as, the pocketbook and my wife would let me. And then when they got to the rules changes for 2010, I said, if you can't give me a 3-year window and some consistency that I can bank on and plan on and develop what we have, then, I can't continue. And obviously they had their rules and I had mine. So we parked the car and now it's part of the garage grill.
Well, it almost feels like it's an inspiration. Well, it's been in every restaurant. It's been the first one we seem to roll in every time. So,
Well, like I said, it was, I always seem to take on the things that have never been done. And it's just like the restaurants now, these have never been done, not the way that we do them.
no.
These are the most unique automotive themed restaurants in the country. And nobody has the concept that we have, which we're in, as you know, we're well in the process now of getting ready to roll out on a franchise basis.
Absolutely.
But it's kind of like developing that car, a lot less expensive. So,
Yeah, but you definitely have some stories, that's for sure. And I'm sure there's more stories from every track and everywhere you went, but I appreciate you sharing them.
yeah, well, every once in a while I'll pull out the race books that gives all the data and feedback that we had. Car was expensive because we hired Jota out of the UK to race manage the car.
And that's a computer control?
No, Jota is a race team manager.
Okay.
Jota's now running in LMP1. They started as an LMP2 team running 2 cars, and then Sam Hignett, who manages Jota, jumped up to LMP1, or hypercar as they now call it, initially running Porsches, and this year he switched over to running Cadillacs.
Okay.
So, but they're one of the foremost race management teams. So I had Sam and his crew come over because it takes, a specialty skill to be able to work on these cars. Sam had had a lot of history with ZYTEK, so it was a perfect fit for us to do that. But then we had, all of the crew that comes in to supplement all of that. So, time you get 30 people in the paddock and fly them all in, get them all housed, get them all fed, get them all in uniforms. It ends up being a big nut every weekend. It was, depending on where the race was, between $200,000 and $400,000 a weekend by the time you
getting the team there, let alone the car,
all
making
there,
sure the car's ready to go.
Yeah.
And then you got to have hospitality and all those pieces put together.
And we tried to stay, we jumped into the deep end of the pool, as it were. And we did okay. We would have been better off with a life preserver had we had Larry as a partner.
So, car's here now. It's beautiful. It's a great showpiece. Cool story to tell. Do you ever expect yourself to go back jumping into
I don't
deep
think
end
so
of
at
racing?
this point in time. I mean, now it's, I watched the, what was it? I watched the endurance race, the last one in Europe, and it's all proliferated with nothing. There are no more privateers like me. We're a dinosaur.
You have to be a manufacturer.
You have to be a man. Now it's all populated by Porsche, Cadillac, BMW, Aston Martin. All these big manufacturers are coming in now, and they're running multiple cars. They have some customer cars that come onto the track, but they're talking about an LMP1 grid next year in the WC of 18 LMP1 cars, and they're all manufacturer based. I think Hyundai just announced that they're coming in with one. So, all these manufacturers are flocking to this because I think the hybrid technology is going to be the powertrain of the future, foreseeable future. We still don't know how to run really all electric cars. We have no infrastructure, to support them. Our motto back then when we did it was the electrification of transportation. That was kind of our byline.
Well,
so,
I mean, and what is it, 15 years now?
Yeah.
And you're starting to see that. Hybrids still have a big place. Absolutely.
well, I think hybrids are the next generation. I think the plug-in hybrid, they don't have a long battery range in them. I remember the first time we put our car on the track and drove it down the pits. We had to take an air horn with us.
So quiet.
It was so quiet, which you'd never heard that in a paddock area or down a pit lane. So we were hitting the air horn to let people know we were coming.
Well, I mean, and those little things of learning how to do that as a manufacturer do translate to the road.
Oh yeah, it all has.
Somebody had to look at that. My wife has a hybrid electric car, and it's a plug-in hybrid, so we got 50 miles around town.
Yeah,
but it's got
I was first. I'd never been on an electric car, but the first time I went to the ZYTEK factory when we were first putting this deal together, they were doing a lot of smart cars with electric motors in them, and it amazed me what they can do.
The amount of torque that's coming out of it.
Oh, you go out and go to those English roundabouts and keep it floored. Oh, it's all you could do to keep that little smart on the road. So it was impressive technology.
How much extra weight does ZYTEK have because of the battery? Is it like a Tesla today where they're a heavy car?
When you, back then, in those days, when you went to balance of performance, which is really the big, thing today in sports car racing, typically you equalize them by weight or by fuel capacity. We didn't get penalized so much because we had the extra weight of the hybrid system. All in, it was probably, I don't know, maybe 70 pounds.
Did they add it to you, or
no? That we showed up on the weight scales with. We already had 70 extra pounds.
Right, so you didn't get penalized.
Yeah, so we didn't get that much penalty in terms of that.
Well, if you could do it all over again, what would you do?
Oh, I'd do it again.
You would?
Yeah, I'm smarter
get
now.
Better, get somebody with more money than you.
But I'm not any younger. But yeah, there were a lot of things that we could have done, I think, from an engineering standpoint that would have streamlined that system and made it a lot more competitive than what it was.
Have you gotten any calls, people saying, Steve,
no,
I need some help?
I'm always amazed, though, when I see the broadcast of the modern day hybrid sports cars. you never see any of the commentators go back and say, well, what was the genesis of it? Because we were the Columbus of the day in terms of this technology. Like I said, we didn't get a lot of recognition other than a few, attaboys on the back.
Yeah, you were in Motor Trend, ESPN. I was doing some research.
The powertrain won the European Powertrain of the Year. And like I said, awards we got from some of the local agencies and groups. It was nice. We've got all their plaques down on the wall, so.
Awards don't write checks, right?
No, they don't.
Well, appreciate you talking about the car with me. I hope you can go down and show me a little bit on
Sure.
the car, some of how the controls work, those kind of things.
I'm not sure I can remember.
Well, we
Try.
can point them out.
Yeah. Okay.
And appreciate you here at the Garage Grill. What's your favorite dish here? I ask everybody this.
It depends from day to day, but it's hard to beat, personally, the fish and chips.
I think I just saw you have.
Yeah. So
I do like the fish and chips, so yeah. The brisket sandwich is what I'm going to have. Well, let's go down and we'll take a look at
Okay.
the car.